to finish the explaining stuff, we're gonna go over two things in detail. Do you want to go over the PowerPoint? I mean, PowerPoint. Bro, where am I? Engine. The engine in detail. We're gonna go over the power unit. That's what I meant.
Okay. So the engine has we're gonna go over every specific part and kind of what it does essentially. So the basic part is an ICE, which is the same engine you have kind of in your car, which is where they get like the V6 1.6 liter essentially part. So essentially you have your pistons, your crankshaft and your conrod, and essentially what happens is it turns around and that's what moves. Is it the conrod that moves essentially the tires?
The crankshaft one.
Crankshaft. Yeah, that one. And
so that's just a normal engine,
exactly,
like the same one you get in a car, just standard.
Exactly. So what happens is it works on a 4-cycle something, I don't remember.
4-stroke cycle.
4-stroke cycle, yes. So essentially the air is sucked in, it's filled with fuel, it's compressed, it's ignited, and then it's moved out and new air comes in. And essentially by using, all the F1 engines are direct injection engines, meaning that they control the amount of air and the amount of fuel they're putting in. And by doing that, by controlling the amount of fuel that's going in, you control the essentially amount of performance. So if you ever played the F1 game, you can tune the amount of fuel you're putting in to get more performance. Same idea essentially. That's exactly it.
So when they say turn the engine down at the end of a race and stuff, that's one of the ways they can do it.
Is decreasing the amount of fuel that's coming in. Essentially, you decrease the amount of air that's going in, all of that stuff.
Because you're also using a set amount of fuel in the race as well. Like there's no refueling. The fuel you start the race with, you have to last.
There is refueling before the race.
I'm gonna confuse everyone.
Yeah, no refueling. I'm just annoying him. Anyways, so the air going out from the ICU goes into the turbocharger, and essentially the turbocharger is made out of a turbine and a compressor essentially. The turbine goes around and it triggers the compressor takes in more air and essentially directs it into the ICE. And essentially what happens is, if say you turn up the engine and you're directing more fuel into, because you want more performance, then that means that you're going to get more air from the compressor. So you can direct more air in and extract more essentially energy out. So I think Mercedes hit on one of their last engines like 50% thermal efficiency, which means that out of all the fuel that's going in, they're extracting about 50% of that, the energy in that fuel. 50% is wasted. But that's a lot higher than like a normal car is like 35% essentially. So like you only get 35% of all the fuel in your car. Everything else is like wasted essentially. Anyways, the turbocharger is connected to the MGU-H. So the MGU-H is, for the new engines, that's the big part they're trying to remove essentially, and it's one of the most complicated parts in the car. And essentially what it does is, how do I say, in simple terms, it harnesses the energy from the turbocharger, and it can either direct it into the energy store, which in simple terms is a battery. You can choose to store it in whatever way. Like there are a few ways you can store it, but like say it's a battery. The MGH essentially takes the energy recovered from the turbocharger, puts it in the energy store. The second use for it is, in cars generally, like when they slow down and they start to say you slow down in a corner and then you're gonna go straight and you put your foot down on the accelerator, you get a bit of delay in the turbocharger. And you see that in older cars. You don't get that today in F1 cars, because essentially what happens is they use the energy in the MGUH so the turbocharger, because it's based off of the air coming out of the ICU, when the car slows down, the ICU slows down, and so the air going into the turbocharger slows down, so the turbocharger slows down. And so by using the MGUH, you can speed up the turbocharger, and by speeding up the turbocharger, when you get off the line or after a corner, you don't get that delay in the turbocharger, you go off really quickly. And then you've got the MGUK. The MGUK essentially, all it does is it harnesses energy when the car slows down. So say you go into a corner, you're losing a lot of kinetic energy. That kinetic energy is harnessed by the MGUK, and then depending on what you're using it for, it can either be directed to the energy store, or it can be directed directly to the MGUH, or directed to the turbocharger, depending on the function. And then the last thing you have the energy store. We said is like either a battery or there are multiple ways to store it, which the FIA regulates. The last thing is the control electronics, and the control electronics is basically like the functioning brain that directs essentially where everything's going, where the energy is going, all of that stuff. In terms of like the engine penalties and all of that, you get a certain number of components of each of the ones we've mentioned so far. So like LNG store, MGUK, MGH, turbocharger, ICE, and all of it together is known as the PU, or the power unit essentially. And so you get a number. So say if you exceed, like Lewis changed his ICU in one of the races, was in Brazil. No, Brazil. He took a new Brazil. Yeah, probably Brazil. Yeah. He took a new ICE in Brazil. So that only knocks you down like 5 places. Where if you change the whole power unit, you get like a 20-place grid penalty. So like if realistically, if you come first, you start last. So 20 place maximum.
IC, just to confirm, ICE
Internal combustion.
and ICU is just internal combustion unit. They're the same thing. So when you're saying ICE and ICU, they're just interchangeable. And then, I guess one of the key things that this caused. So obviously, as we found out now, the engine's very complex. Obviously, the main purpose is just to produce energy, and then with the amount of energy lost, 35% efficiency in a normal car isn't what you want in F1. So to have all of these parts making it even more efficient, it's obviously very complex. There's a lot of systems involved. That's why teams end up developing it a lot, but also they have loads of penalties, as you said. You're only allowed a certain number for each season, and when these were first introduced in 2014, teams were getting like 70-place grid penalties for replacing it by the end of the season, because they had to replace everything, every race.
Yeah, basic reliability has come a long way since probably like reliability has improved. Looking to 2026, the main component they want to remove is the MGUH, because they essentially, it does not translate at all to normal cars, like civilian cars essentially. It's not useful in any way. Like Mercedes, I think, used it in one hyper-performance car, or used some of the knowledge from it rather, but didn't actually use it directly. So it's not useful for any road running cars. So that's the main component they want to remove, and they essentially simplify the engine a lot. One of the things that like Honda grasped the past few years in improving kind of their engine was 2 things. Their energy store, they managed to improve the amount of energy they're actually storing, and the second thing was the MGUH. That was critical in their engine being like quite like competitive this last year. They're still down, I think, like looking at the amount of like horsepower produced by each engine, Mercedes is still ahead of everyone else, but reliability is a key part of like a 23 race season. So reliability is going to be a huge thing, especially under the cost cap. Because like replacing an engine extremely expensive. So, but that's essentially kind of like the power unit
as a whole. Yeah, and they're quite even now in terms of performance. Mercedes used to be well ahead. This is what's caused them to be winning for the past however many years. But teams are catching up now. In 2017, we saw Ferrari through
but like that
legal or illegal manners managing to get quite high engine power for the past few years, so they were improving.
Yeah, but 2020 said a lot.
They did go backwards, but now they've quite recent. When was it? I think it was Saudi. They came up with I think it was an MGUH upgrade. That MGUH or MGUK. Basically, they upgraded one of the parts of their engine or power unit, and then that got them another like 20 horsepower, which is now like they're going to use it as part of this engine. And like this year, and that's what gave them like a big advantage over McLaren.
To be fair, from now to the end of the season, from now to 2026, there is an engine freeze. So that means that the engine, essentially, this engine is the only thing you can introduce new is reliability improvements. So like from here to 2026, Mercedes have the best engine, Red Bull second best, or Honda the second best, and like you have Ferrari third, and Alpine is just terrible. And basically going into 2026, essentially from now until then, each company, each team is designing the new engine, essentially new regulations. But like compared to a road car, like say like a hyper performance car or something like that. Like it only has like a 1.6 liter V6, which is very very small
Yeah.
compared to like some have like most of them will have like a 4 liter V12 or something like that.
Yeah, supercars or any sports cars really. Or
But like
V6,
these cars will
V12.
extract way more out of it than the normal road cars.
Yeah, like I think I saw like people love doing. Basically, people don't understand how fast F1 cars are. I saw like there's always on the trending page there'll be like a 2011 Red Bull, and they'll have it drag race like a Bugatti Chiron.
Yeah,
I think they did it. They did it against a Tesla or something as well. I think I might have seen that.
I think the Tesla won. The Tesla was one of the few that actually won against it.
I think the Tesla won, yeah. But then obviously all the comments were like, "Oh, just wait until the Tesla has to go around the corner."
Yeah,
And
basically.
it's not wrong.
The Tesla is only good off the line because it has that initial. It will win that initial part of like the electric energy essentially over like any mechanical car. But then like if it's actually long enough, the Formula One car is just gonna catch and blow it out of the water. But in terms of like the next few years, before the introduction, I think by 2023, Formula One will have moved completely to biofuels. So they're no longer going to be using. So essentially, it's in their drive to become, I think, is it carbon net zero or something?
Carbon neutral, yeah.
Carbon neutral, yeah. So by 2023, I think they're not going to be using any. They're going to be only using biofuels. And 2026, they remove the MGUH, and essentially the reason is to become then all the technology that's developed in F1 can be translated into a road car and improving all of that stuff. So like Formula E, for instance, that is used by all the companies that are developing the battery solutions, all of that stuff. That's translated into the cars that they are actually manufacturing. So you see like Jaguar, they're quite big in electrical cars. You had Mercedes there, Audi, all of the companies that have quite competitive actual electric cars were in Formula E, and like that technology translates. And I think that's one thing Formula One is doing to kind of become more attractive for manufacturers, is that Formula One is it's a break-even sport. You're not actually going to make profit out of. But if you break even, but you use that technology for your road cars, you're actually making profit in that sense, because you're making profit off your marketing, because marketing is huge, like Formula One as a tool. But you're also making profit.
Energy drinks company has two
exactly.
teams. Well, one now, but still.
But also the second thing is you're making you're making money off marketing. You're not losing any money, you're just breaking even. So whatever you invest, you're just getting back exactly the same. And the third thing is you're now gaining actual like a technological advancement in a sense, but that all the technology are actually being invented and like designed in Formula One. You can essentially, you have all the blueprints to just take that and just apply it to like one of your cars.
Yeah, because the whole point of F1 in general, or how it's meant to be, is because the amount of money these teams can invest and the level of talent they have with their engineers, the turnover for developing things is insane. It's so much faster. Like if you want to see a certain technology put in a road car, like if F1 was aiming to produce self-driving cars, it would have probably done it by now.
Yeah.
Or at least very good ones. If you're trying to get very good self-driving cars, and we're talking completely automated, F1 would have done it by now.
Because it's so competitive.
But because these are just general car companies, obviously they've got talent and stuff, but the turnover isn't as fast. Because F1 is so quick in every aspect, they need to be ahead on these things, and they were kind of backed into a corner by Formula E because that meant they couldn't go to fully electric engines. So the biofuel thing is what they're trying to do now.
Yeah, that's good. Like if you go to a fully electric engine, I just hate that.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't.
It sounds dead. It doesn't sound.
No,
like
yeah.
Also, one of the good things about removing the MGH is it said that it actually mutes the engine. So by removing the MGH, you'll actually, like, the sound will go back essentially. We'll get more sound. As a fun fact, Matteo Binotto, the principal of Ferrari, was in charge of Michael Schumacher's engine in 2005, I think.
No, was he?
He was in charge of reliability, and he was his engine engineer essentially in 2004 or 5.
That's so weird.
Matteo Binotto, yes. There's a video of him where Michael goes to him with a mic. I saw this today, literally, and he's like, "Explain what you do." He's like, "Italiano," and he's like, "Sure," and basically explains that he manages the reliability and all of that stuff related to the engine. So like his engine performs at peak performance.
I'm trying to imagine what he looked like. Did he have a skinhead or was his hair?
No,
like,
his hair was
longer?
very short. It was very short, and he's wearing those, like,
Oh, the classic glasses.
brimless glasses. Yeah, it looked quite funny.
What a legend.
But you can you can find the video and tag it in like the video description.
Alright, yeah, you know the one you're describing. If I find it, I'll try put it in the description.
It's quite funny.
Alright, do we go onto the steering wheel or should we skip that part?
Nah.
Do we skip it?
I don't know.
Do we explain the steering wheel?
No, that's fine. Skip it.
Yeah, we'll allow it. If you desperately want to see us explain parts of an F1 steering wheel, let us know. Anyway, okay, so we kind of touched on the regulations for 2020. Wait, what were you going to say?
I was just going to crop this part.
Fair enough.
We can stop here though, and just make this video in a new video.
Yeah?
Because it's a different series, isn't it?
Alright. So you want to start again, new intro, new podcast?
Yeah.
Alright, that means if we're cutting this up, we've got...
Yeah, you can...
You say it.
Thank you guys for tuning in, and we're going to stop
Wait,
here.
What? No, you've got to do it again, because then if we just cut it out of nowhere,
Okay.
you've got to say like, that's us summarising the engine. Blah, blah, blah.
Okay. Wow, so demanding.
What do you mean?
I think this is the end of the second episode of explaining Formula 1. So we've covered basically all the basics that you'd need to kind of understand Formula 1. Hopefully you can watch a race now and you won't get confused. It's okay to kind of get confused by like certain words. You'll kind of pick it up as you go along. I remember when I used to watch at the beginning, I'd like every race I'd like Google what's oversteer, what's understeer. I'd read it, understand it. 5 minutes later, I forget what's understeer and oversteer.
Yeah.
So it comes with time, and as you watch, you'll grasp it.
Yeah,
It's fine.
and you don't need to know the engine stuff. It was for people who are interested, but if you don't get that stuff, you don't need to know how an engine works. Like if it's just for the curiosity, like.
I think we'll probably link a few maybe in-depth videos that you can go and watch if you're interested in this. That if you don't understand it as well, link a few simple ones with animations that can probably be helpful.
Yeah, I'll put one for like the main aspects. So like there's a good video made by a YouTube channel on logistics, because I explained these in the first episode. We've got logistics, aero, the engine as well. Like the main topics, I can try and find a good video to cover all of them, to like if you're curious to know more.
Yeah, basically. Anyways, thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next week. I think we're going to be covering the 2022 regulations and what's different from the current regulations, what to expect. Yeah, and hopefully we'll see Lewis losing. Anyways, you can see his face is just like, oh. Anyways, thank you guys for listening. I'll see you next week.